Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. The Broadband Bunch Zero Touch Learning Series is live. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Craig Corbin. Today's session, why aren't there more open access networks? Broadband Bunch podcast and Zero Touch Learning Series brought to you, as always, by your Zero Touch automation experts, ETI Software, and by UTOPIA Fiber. Be sure to follow the Broadband Bunch on Facebook at www.facebook.com/the Broadband Bunch, and on Twitter at twitter.com/podcast bunch. You can access Broadband Bunch podcasts on Spotify, Google Podcasts, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and iHeartRadio. A couple of quick reminders before we introduce our esteemed panel today. Session is most definitely interactive. We encourage you to submit questions via the chat function. Our team will be monitoring those throughout the event. Session also being recorded and will be available to all attendees for future access. Please feel free to submit potential topics for future Zero Touch Learning Series sessions, or if you'd like to suggest prospective panelists. Again, that can all be done via the chat function. And thanks in advance for your participation. Very much a privilege to introduce our moderator for today's session, a 30-year veteran of the communications industry, Heather Gold, CEO of HBG Strategy, previously served as president and CEO of the Fiber Broadband Association, following her tenure as senior vice president of external affairs and access management for XO Communications. He graduated magna cum laude from Tufts University with bachelor's and master's degrees in economics, earned an MBA in finance and marketing from Washington University in St. Louis. She also completed the general management program of the Harvard Business School. Our moderator, Heather Gold. Heather?
Thanks, Craig. We have a little bit of feedback. Maybe we need to go on mute unless we're talking, but hopefully not. So anyway, I am so thrilled to have this panel today. I know there is lots and lots of interest in this topic on open access networks. So as Craig said, we expect this session to be lively and informative and interactive. And we are excited to be joined by three entities who are actually building and providing open access networks in their communities, plus Chris Mitchell from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, who has been a big proponent of open access networks. And with that, let me just introduce each of our speakers. We have Sean Coletti, who serves as the mayor of Ammon, Idaho, which runs its open access network, Ammon Fiber. We have Dave Corrado, who is the CEO of Medina County Fiber Network, just getting into the open access business. I think a lot of us know who Chris Mitchell is, the Director of Community Broadband Network Initiative from the Institute of Self-Reliance. And last but not least, Kim McKinley, UTOPIA's Chief Marketing Officer. And so with that, let's just jump into the questions. Each of you has gotten your communities, or in the case of Chris, other communities, to develop open access networks. Do you think this model is going to grow in acceptance and become more prevalent as they see your success? Kim, do you want to take a first punch at that?
Of course I do. And it's probably me who's having the technical difficulties. It's been a day. So yeah, I think you're going to see the prevalence of this model grow, because at least personally, we believe it's the proper role of government versus the private sector, that the government should put in infrastructure, which broadband is the infrastructure of today. And so I think it is going to grow, and the demand, and I'm sure everybody on this panel is going to agree, the demand is skyrocketed for open access fiber. I always say my phone never stops ringing until I just shut it off, because I mean, of how many communities around the country are saying, how can we get into this open access space?
Chris, what are you seeing?
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I'm very strongly in favor of open access. I also believe cities should chart their own course. So I'm not here to speak ill about any other business model opportunities, but I think one of the best things that open access has going for it is that a lot of communities simply do not want to be a retail service provider, and they would like to be open to not only competition for broadband internet type access, but also healthcare innovation and other kinds of innovative services. And they want to build those kinds of platforms. And so I think that there's a real bright future for open access.
Sean, you've been a real banner city for open access. What is your sense?
Oh, I think it's spreading like wildfire. So we started out as kind of the first city in Idaho to have an open access system, and our neighboring city, Idaho Falls, jumped on shortly thereafter to offer open access to its residents and businesses as well. And the reality is that it's causing a cost war for fiber, and all of our services are the costs are going down dramatically. So not only does it make sense by cities providing infrastructure, essentially providing the road into a home business, but it's making internet cheap again.
Really, you guys are seeing that? How about you, David? You're just you just started the process, right?
Well, actually in Medina, we've run our commercial network for the last 10 years. We've just started a residential network about 6 weeks ago. So we've been around a little bit. We have actually utilized the network from an economic development perspective. We have noticed, obviously, the market prices reducing significantly with the competitiveness. However, we have found in the last 3 years of the $650 million that was produced in economic development in the county, 61% of that was done by companies who expanded that used Medina County fiber. And 91% of all the new jobs were also from companies on the fiber. And we're finding that companies looking to relocate from Europe and other areas, their third question, and moving up quickly, is does your government have a municipal network, and how is it structured?
Wow. And I mean, I guess coming from the EU, that would be a more common. It's been longer. It's been in place longer over there than here. So what do you think it was about an open access network, that this model, that attracted your community and got it engaged and supportive? Whoever wants to jump into that, as opposed to trying to make a private provider come in and build it.
Yeah, well, the commissioners here in Medina County have always believed that government handles infrastructure the best, that it's really not the place for government to be in the retail space, but rather to be a provider of infrastructure that can be shared and enable other businesses to use that, be it an airport or a waterway system or a roadway. And fiber was just another utility. So that was basically the draw for the open access.
Great. What about you, Sean?
Well, I think that in our community in small town Idaho, we weren't seeing those opportunities available from private companies as far as creation of a competitive fiber marketplace. We have a few small providers, a few big providers, but they were not interested and not able really to provide the kind of connections that we were looking for. And so it made a lot of sense, where we already had a fiber ring that was connecting all of our government buildings, for us to tap into that for other people and other businesses and residents.
And Ken?
I would like to say we have all this like philosophical reasons why we started being open access. But let's be honest, the reason we became an open access network is because we were legislatively stopped in the beginning. There is laws here in Utah that you have to partner with a private provider, a government, in order to provide services. And although we were legislatively stopped, I think that if you look 20 years ago when those actions happened, we wouldn't change anything differently now, because we believe that open access is definitely the right way to go for communities. And as Chris mentioned earlier, a lot of communities don't want to get into the business of hiring and managing a network. They don't want to be offering services. So that is how we got here. And as being the largest open access network in the country, we've taken some arrows, but I definitely think it is the right way to go.
Yeah, and I might say that there's another practical consideration right now as we have money from the American Rescue Plan flowing. If you have the money to build out to a part of your community, it may not be really feasible to try to hire a general manager and to start performing customer service with the amount of money. And so one of the things about open access is it can give you an incremental start. And you might only start with 1 or 2 ISPs. You might start with 1 ISP and be committed to open access, but that 1 ISP will already have a network operations center and other experience that you can draw upon as you're scaling up from those humble beginnings.
Very interesting. And then you mentioned the American Rescue legislation. What it looks like the federal government is starting to get more interested in open access. And do we think that they can get this across the finish line, and how are they promoting it? Because I know in the past, and Kim, you and I have talked about this before, there were regulatory impediments to open access. So what do you see the changing mood? What kind of proof is there that the federal government at least is changing?
You want to start, Chris?
No, I was really hoping you would, Kim. You're the one that's talking with them and giving the real practical challenges of. I mean, I think it was worth starting at the EBB, right? I mean, we see they're working with you on the emergency broadband benefit to make sure that it can work well with open access systems. That's one sign in which we see the federal government committed to making these processes work on this newer idea.
Absolutely. When we saw the EBB lessen the regulations so we could qualify, I thought that was a huge move, because it on both sides of the equation. Usually in these federal programs, we applied for the last round of RDOF money, and they basically, the federal government told us at that time we didn't qualify because we didn't our service levels weren't adequate. Our base service is 250 megs symmetrical. So thank you for disqualifying us on that category. But yeah, I believe that the federal government has been watching open access networks, and they're looking around the world how open access networks have been very successful in other countries. But can we get this across the finish line? I think that really depends on local governments and everybody coming together to really support open access. And the telecom lobby is going to do its best to stop this from happening, because they see too much at stake to let open access become the predominant model throughout the United States.
So by and large, nobody on this call is necessarily operating in a area which you expect the large telcos to go after, correct? Haven't you all been primarily deploying in communities where they sort of ignored you, or am I wrong about that?
I think UTOPIA is definitely in areas that Kim has deployed everywhere.
Yeah, we deployed in areas like we just finished Morgan, Utah, and one of the large incumbents actually left the city because they didn't want to upgrade their equipment. And then we go into very competitive marketplaces that have 2 big incumbents in there, and the cities are still reaching out to us and saying we need solutions. They are just not satisfied. I think that is a statement that is that we hear all the time. Just because the incumbents are there, that they are delivering, and that is not the truth. That's happening in Utah and in all communities across the country.
And
yeah,
Sean,
I remember. Sean, I remember speaking with folks in Ammon, and in Ammon, people I think have a confusion about, you have a cable operator that advertises gigabit services, and I spoke with people about how they were frustrated with the level of reliability and the pricing, and that's one of the things. It's not that you have nothing there; it's that people want something better.
That's correct. That's right. There's some advertising that has not been true to the statements that have been made as far as what is offered. And I think some people are confused about that when they think they're getting fast internet and they realize that they're not getting what was advertised. And I just like to say that I think that it's a really good sign as far as the Rescue Plan Act goes, that they're even providing or offering money to municipalities for specifically for broadband. I think this is a big thing, and right now I know that the federal government's busy putting together rules on how this should be used, and it's important for all the providers of open access systems to be speaking up and encouraging the federal government to make sure that public funds for broadband that come through the Rescue Plan Act go to public infrastructure and not directly to a private company. And I made that statement to Gene Sperling last week about that, but that's a very important.
Yeah, and what did you find, David, in Medina? Were you up against some incumbents that just weren't bringing the service levels you wanted?
It was all about individuals or businesses having the ability to have options. So any company I walk into, there were 2 or 3 other companies that were providing telecommunications, other carriers, when we first started. There has been quite a bit of overbuilding going on. So now there are roughly 6 other competitors to us in Medina County. And then you add our 12 to 14 carriers on any given day. People now have a choice of about 20 carriers. So that was the drive, and it wasn't all about just the delivery of the circuit itself, but was actually the Network Operations Center services and the ability to react quickly, having local network operations centers, having local fiber teams. We employ all local. So within our 150 mile network, all our resources are right here smack in the middle, which makes a very different situation for those carriers that were here, and you're talking to somebody across the globe trying to understand what's going on in your community.
What differentiates you all from a municipal owned utility? Are you usually historically a cold start? What would drive a community? Chris, you do a lot of work with the co-ops, for example. What would drive a community to do an open access network versus putting pressure on their or using their municipal owned utility?
Yes, and there's been a mix. I don't know offhand how many of them, but Sean mentioned his neighbor, Idaho Falls. They're a municipal electric that is working with Kim then to do open access. So the municipal electrics, I think, go different directions. One, they have a certain level of pride and distrust in letting other people use their stuff. I think they've had 100 years of demonstrating that they are very good at delivering a service and wanting to do it in a particular way. And so they may be less likely to want to deal with what can be a messy world of trying to, figure out what can work for multiple different ISPs. But cities that have what you call the cold start, I think, are more likely to go on an open access path, I think. But there's also a question of scale, I think, and that's we have on the order of 30 municipal open access networks, but I believe probably only 5 or 6 of them have really competitive environments, and that might even be pushing it a little bit because you need to hit, I would say, I don't know, Kim, maybe 10,000 subs more than that in order to really start to get the benefits of it. Now, Sean can tell us actually about his experience because they have benefits from it with well less than that, but still to achieve the marketplace often is required more, I think.
Yeah, I think for us, we have 130,000 residents who we pass, and that we have 16 providers who are let me see, we have 16 who are coming. We have 14 now who offer services. So you really have to make sure you have a market share for ISPs to be able to compete, because you don't want you don't want 20 ISPs going after 10,000 customers. They don't have a lot of market share, and UTOPIA in the past had a history of having bad ISPs on their networks. And that is one thing that you really want to make sure is that as the municipality or governmental agency, that you have enough market share, and second of all, that you have quality ISPs who are going to deliver on the services.
We're seeing what Christopher was just talking about. We have 5 utilities in Medina County that own poles and provide service to their residents. The one particular, Rural Electric, we've been trying to partner with in the county, and they want to do a fiber to the home all by themselves, even though we have fiber in the surrounding area and are expanding our network into that area. So I tend to echo what Christopher said, that I believe that it's a little bit tougher to work with them on a partnership from the, from starting with the municipal utility as compared to going from the cold start.
Interesting. We have a question from the audience here. Phil Fine from Innovative, I'm sure it's something that I can't see. On its face, open access is the most dollar-efficient way of deploying broadband services, a single network that carries multiple retailers. Clearly, incumbents and equipment manufacturers see this as a threat. How do you see this changing? And then he goes back to, is this a common practice in Europe and APAC? And how is this overcome in how do we overcome this prejudice in North America? Or as and Chris has heard me say this many times, Americans don't like to share. And I think that's been an impediment to our developing shared networks. I mean, think about it, you guys. We don't have a history of sharing. It's just not part of our DNA. So I really applaud all of you who have gotten people to share your networks. But I think that's basically what he's asking.
I think we are seeing.
How do we get people to share?
I think we're going to see it change. I don't think we're there yet. I think we here at UTOPIA have some ILECs who are on our network, and we have, if not the largest, I think it's the largest fixed wireless provider in the country who provide services on our network. So we are starting to see people who in the past wouldn't have even considered joining our network, but we are seeing those people slowly come on. And we have had some conversations with some of the bigger telcos in the past. They haven't yet jumped, but we have had some of those conversations of saying, but they need like I go back to my point, they need a large enough market share to make it worth their while, because the systems and how open access works is very hard on some of those big established companies.
Sean, David, anything to add to that?
I agree with Kim. I mean, we have one of the smaller systems of what we're seeing here with Kim and David, but we found that our success stories in Idaho have been many, and and when we share those, I think it's been helpful for other communities to jump on board, for the message to be spread, and they will keep coming. And I also know that the larger incumbent providers are looking at Ammon Fiber and saying, how can we play? But it is still a small market in Ammon. But when we get larger, I expect that they'll come.
Yeah, and it's definitely a cultural change to our country. I mean, if you take a look at the open market capitalism, right, competitiveness is the foundation. The only difference, though, from the competitiveness of an open access network, and traditionally in the United States, it's, as you mentioned, competitiveness of being better than your competition, not working with your competition, sharing a certain basic foundation. In other countries that have survived over the years, they have done so by banding together, pulling their resources, just because either they're small or they're an island and they don't have certain resources, where in the US we have quite a few resources which give us the ability to come up with new ideas, but not necessarily to share those ideas as protected by the patent office to get 1 foot ahead of the other, starting from a cold start right away to say, hey, let's share and then make this project better. There are a lot of CFOs that say we can make more money if we just do it ourselves. Ergo, we get the overbuilding, which is why our poles are sagging with 10 to 20 cables and constant what I call the circle of death, where everybody comes in and overbuilds, and then somebody sells it to a huge carrier, and it goes back to just 1 or 2 carriers anyways because the other ones can't make money.
Dave, I just want to know that you really hate this pole situation, right? I think you've brought it up a few times.
Yeah, well, right now I'm paying a lot of money because a lot of poles are being swapped out, and we're doing Medina County is the 3rd fastest growing county for the last 10 years in Northeast Ohio. So they're widening streets, and it's just costing me a lot to move a lot of fiber. So there's got to be a better way. I'm all for the dig once policy.
Who isn't? Are there people that actually aren't for dig once? That would be shocking.
That would be the pole owners. Yeah.
Also the public works directors in many places.
Right.
Now, Sam, you mentioned some of the unique needs of open access networks and how some of the incumbents were struggling with that. What are some of the unique needs, particularly with respect to the equipment and software needs that that are required for a multi-ISP network versus traditional ISP, single ISP?
I don't know, Heather, if you have all day for this conversation.
What?
So, I mean, it's so robust of what ISPs need and what they want, because every ISP is different. On the UTOPIA network, we have 30 ISPs and what they want and how they want it. And as being a carrier class active E network, like I know that Sean over here does great with SDN solutions, but it's really hard for us to do SDN solutions on how our network is built. So it's really just, I think they want access to be able to troubleshoot. They want access to automation. They want access to all the information. I mean, they want everything. So how do you get that in everybody's needs into one OSS BSS system? I don't know. We're working on it. But we're a lot of communities where I think they think SDN is the great solution, and Sean has a lot of great success in that marketplace. What we're doing at Team UTOPIA is we've built a system from the ground up, and we're really using automation to make a lot of these systems happen.
I think that's one of the great fears that people have in an open access system is that you have 2 entities, a network owner and these ISPs, and are they able to find a source of a problem immediately? And that's, I think, a little bit what you're talking about there, Kim, is that like it's really important that a customer doesn't call an ISP and be told you should check with UTOPIA, and then they call UTOPIA and then they get that is a recipe for losing customers. And I feel like that is one of the issues that just really needs to make sure that there's a plan for.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that's why you have to have really good partnerships with the ISPs along with a great system in order to make it really happen. But yeah, I think, and one of the issues, I think there are systems out there, and I know ETI provides some solutions, and there's some other people who provide some solutions for open access networks. One of the problems UTOPIA has is that we're 20 years old, so we have a lot of baggage that we've had to account for. So I do think it's feasible to make it happen. I just think we've dealt in some of the errors of the UTOPIA past.
And Sean and David, have you found similar issues that it's hard to get larger incumbents to join your network because they're worried about the OSS BSS back office systems?
We haven't had that issue. Now, again, we've just been in commercial. We're talking about it for residential where people have the ability to change back and forth where you need that system. But from a commercial perspective, all of our customers hold their contract with the ISP, and we invoice the ISP. So they only receive one invoice. And we just we can follow any procurement or onboarding process that our carriers have, whether it's an AT&T or whether it's a local carrier like a Lightspeed Hosting or Bresco Broadband or First Communications. we pretty much have, drawn those processes in place. So we are not quite as automated as UTOPIA, but it hasn't been a big issue with us as long as we have set the expectation that the point person is the ISP running over our fiber.
And for
John?
Ammon, yeah, thank you. For Ammon Fiber, I'm afraid I'm not as technically savvy as all of you, and hearing the acronyms and not knowing exactly what they mean. But it hasn't been an issue. We only have 4 ISPs on our system right now. That we only asked that they agree to share the space, and we don't have a lot of other requirements for them. The customer has a direct bill to the ISP, and then they pay us for some O&M service, and it just hasn't been a real complicated system. We utilize entry point solutions for our interface, and it's a pretty seamless operation right now.
And I think one of the systems, I'm going to add this, is like when we have some bigger ISPs who have a large market base in other territories or areas around the country. And I think one of the problems is that when they're working with our system, they already having the customer service agents who know our system versus their system and how seamless it goes through both of those. And that is something that we're working through. But it's a really hard process until they get, a few thousand people on their customers on their network. It is hard for those bigger companies to work through the 2 different systems. And when somebody calls up, how do you know it's a UTOPIA customer versus their regular customer, and what system to put them through? But it is something that we're working through. We're at 40,000 customers and growing every month, about 700. So we're going to get there fast, whether we like it or not, Heather.
So I guess that brings me to, do all of you have middle mile networks that you operate at all as well? Because I think the whole open access middle mile model has been around for a while, since the ARRA, our last rescue plan, and the BTOP funding, where it was absolutely required that it be open access in the middle mile. So do all of you have open access networks, and have you had greater acceptance of that and less pushback from large incumbents on riding that network?
We operate middle mile and last mile. We have some contracts which are just dark fiber, shared open middle mile, but the majority are lit circuits. So we actually take our network to a common point where the ISP meets us, whether it's a formal data center or just a carrier hotel, and we will transport their information, be it voice or internet, or just standard transport for data center, from that network to network interface across the middle mile, and then we construct the last mile and deliver them into their customer.
For Ammon, we're just operating the last mile.
Okay, so you're not doing any middle mile. And Kim, you're doing middle mile, right?
We're doing all kinds of miles of fiber. So we have our fiber we have about 3,000 miles plus last time I checked, but I might be wrong on that. And our actual networks starts at the border of Idaho and Utah, and all the way go down to a data center in Vegas. So we have significant amount of middle mile fiber in the ground, and it's really been helpful. And I told you, I think we are just announcing our newest city tomorrow, and I can announce it today as well, but the press release goes out tomorrow. And the reason we were able to get to this city and offer fiber to the home at such a low barrier risk and barrier entry to the city is because we had middle mile that was already existing around.
I think is that 3 cities in 28 days or less?
No, this is probably like the same city. Well, we have a lot of cities in the works, Chris, so a lot of cities in the works. But I mean, I will say this because I didn't get clearance to announce it on the call. Our newest city is going to be Pleasant Grove, Utah. They have made an agreement. It is our largest city to add on to the network since we started adding on new networks. I think it's I think it's about 60,000 people in that city. So I might be wrong on that. I have a lot of cities in my mind. But yeah, it's the reason we were able to get to some of these cities and keep expanding the network is because of middle mile. And I tell people all the time when I'm talking to communities when they're using this ARP funds, if you don't have enough money to do a last mile service, put middle mile in and connect some of your anchor institutions within the communities, because I think that is huge in order to, like, maybe a couple of years down the road get to a fiber to the home project. And I think, Dave, that's in some ways where you guys got to. By having the middle mile, you were really able to kind of launch into this last mile fiber to the home project.
Exactly. Yes.
I think it's interesting in the relationship though, because David, you and I have spent so many times on the phone years ago trying to figure out how to use that middle mile to incent private investment of last mile. And I think we need to be very clear that this nation needs a lot more middle mile, but we cannot expect that on its own to drive real last mile investment. Like, these really are two separate things. And so I don't know if you have a few words, David, about that experience, because now you are very much involved in the push for last mile.
Right. So ours was a public-private partnership through a densification. We basically utilized all the bond money that we floated back in 2010. So, and we weren't going to monetize the network and sell it because it's not a public asset. So the best approach, which took us about 4 years looking high and wide, was to find a private investor that would utilize our middle mile and increase the density in between our network rings for both residential and small business. So they brought in private investment and a revenue sharing model, and we are starting a co-branding campaign, even though we are two separate entities working in partnership. And it was because of that middle mile that saved them the initial startup costs, because we did delay revenue to get them going, as a good partner should. And it turned out that we started 6 weeks ago, as I mentioned. So a little bit behind UTOPIA from the residential side, but better late than never. And we're very excited about it.
You know, I like to say that if we did everything wrong, like, just follow our lead a few years back so you don't have to do everything wrong before you do it right, Dave. And I'm like Ammon and Sean. So, and just a correction, Pleasant Grove only has like 40,000 residents. I increased it by 20,000 apparently.
As a good marketing person should.
Sean, have you, how do you do your middle mile? Do you partner with somebody else, or?
Well, our middle mile is essentially our fiber ring around our city, and which we put in just for our public purposes. And so it exists, it's ours, and we're focusing right now on the last mile.
Okay. I guess, Kim, I was wondering, do you now feel that your scale has really made a difference to your growth? And I guess I'd like to ask Sean and David, and then Chris sort of to weigh in on this. Do you think it's necessary, or is it helpful to achieve the kind of scale that UTOPIA does in order to encourage an open access model?
Who wants to go first?
Jump in, guys. Don't hold back with this crowd.
Well, I don't think the model has to be that big. I mean, UTOPIA has grown leaps and bounds. We're seeing the success of open access. We have a number of networks in Ohio that are between 10 and 20 total miles, that they have a data center centric approach where all the middle mile comes into that data center and the ISPs meet there, and they distribute in that way. I think that obviously the larger the network does obviously bring in more people to see that it is well established. And in this business, on net means everything, or at least a very big part. So that does play into it. But again, with us, we're geographically bound. So instead of expanding, we're increasing density. We're increasing the on-net by running through more streets within our county boundaries, a little different model than UTOPIA. So again, it's a densification, which also lends well to an open access network.
And why are you geographically bound?
The initial 10 years ago when this project came to fruition, it always focused mainly on providing economic development and choice of carriers for Medina County. We do have fiber that goes into parts of Cuyahoga County and Summit County that border us to the north and the east respectively, but 90% of everything we cover is in Medina County. It was always a tool for Medina County companies and residents, and there never was a blueprint to expand. Now, that doesn't mean that our new private partner won't use this as a springboard to expand to other areas of Ohio that we've already spoken with to help them. But as far as the funds from the commissioners or from the county itself, the public funds, that will stay with the geography that we have today.
So you almost have a franchise that you need to operate within, not a franchise, but you're precluded from serving other areas?
We can serve other areas. There just aren't any plans in place. The plan really is to have the private partners utilize our middle mile to springboard into other areas where they can build their middle mile. And then they'll connect over our network to get to their new areas and, and so forth and so on as it grows out. But there won't be any more bonded funds from the county, at least not in the near future, to take this in depth outside of the county.
And Sean, do you see growth aspects by going into other communities or not?
No, our focus is strictly on our city, and we've connected to a few schools that are technically outside of our city boundaries, but our goal is to finish connecting to all of our neighborhoods and passing all of our neighborhoods. We're a little over halfway done. So within the next 3 to 4 years, I would hope that we're finished. And then, like David said, it's a matter of then densification and encouraging more people to connect.
Mayor Coletti, I think.
Go ahead.
I think I would like to note that Ammon may have focused its investment on the city, but you've inspired hundreds of other cities in Idaho alone, from what I can tell, and many other places. And I know that your team has really done a good job of helping to educate, and you yourself have been spending time in DC. So I feel like you're doing a lot to help others to figure out how to move forward at the same time. And I just want to make sure people recognize that.
Yeah, thanks. And I think that's important because right now Idaho's having a real struggle of identity and what do we do with this new broadband thing. And Ammon and Idaho Falls have tried to lead the way in that regard to really encourage better policy at the state level. So that's a real top priority for me.
I have a question from the audience. Do you provide bandwidth and lease the access, or do you provide the fiber and ISPs bring their own bandwidth in your networks?
We have both. You can do both.
Yeah, that's two separate offerings, but yeah, we do both too. You can lease the fiber so they can do point-to-point, end-to-end, or we can provide transport over an NNI using a virtual LAN and all that other tech stuff to make it work.
I think we provide the fiber and the ISPs provide the bandwidth.
Okay, and Kim,
Heather,
you do both?
Yeah, we do both. Like I said, we're a carrier class active E network. We offer anything under the sun, which really makes my job very fun on a daily basis to how to manage all the offerings.
There was the last question on scale. I just wanted to weigh in on, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
So, I mean, I thought it was really interesting when Ammon still had just several hundred members. We saw really remarkable price competition resulting. And we've certainly seen that. I would say that UTOPIA has a wonderful reputation for service, for low prices. The question that I have is that what open access is good for? And yes, but the question is, can it do more? Because arguably many municipal retail services also provide a low cost and good customer service. The hope that I really have is not that we just have price competition, but that we really have innovation on an open platform.
Right.
And for that, I think, Kim at 40,000, like we need to get to like 100,000, 150,000 on a network. We need 1 million people with open access networks in the US. It's going to take us a few years to get there, even if we're aggressive. That's when I think we start to see it. If you have, entire cities that are 500,000 people where you could be on an open access network, that's where we're really going to start to see a differentiation if there is some to be had. And so it's very hard to tell right now at the scale that we operate at what all of the promise is. I think it's mostly theoretical, but we're going to start to see those things soon.
And I agree. And I mean, I don't want to be this full of announcements, but we have something that we have launched, but it's really in the beta phases of the UTOPIA Innovation Labs. And we have some partnerships with some very big national players who are in that space and saying, we want to be a test bed for any innovations that you want to test. Because before, you don't have networks that are big enough to test some of these. And as we're growing, we are developing that network at a scale that people can bring in their innovations to test on our network. So we welcome anybody. My number is out there. My email is out there to contact me if they have any thing they would like to test on our network as well.
So that what you're talking about is testing is innovations that would run on an open access network.
On a high bandwidth broadband, like high use applications, bandwidth use, right? Because what we're seeing is they can't go test these on regular, like the incumbents network. They don't want, those incumbents are not going to let them have the access that a municipally owned network will let them have. So yeah, we are willing to be a test bed for any innovators that who are out there. And so yeah, we should be this is another one of the things, announcing a huge partnership with a national player into the smart application space. So.
Very good. So a question from the audience, which I think could apply to several not just an open access network model, but are you seeing cities, municipal networks that with their own networks expanding their footprint by assessing a larger county or regional network? Something that's already there and acquiring it.
Absolutely, you're seeing so what you first saw, at least here in Utah, is the cities. And so I will say this one community, Morgan. We built out Morgan, and at the time the county was like, we want nothing to do with you. And then Morgan got built out, and then the county's like, well, we felt that we're left behind. And so you are seeing more and more counties and unincorporated areas come to the table to figure out how they can solve those broadband issues. I actually had a city who we just built out recently said, for the first time since they've been a city, they're actually having people come to them and say, can you incorporate us into the city so we can get UTOPIA? And they said, water didn't do it, electrical didn't do it, but broadband is getting these people to come and say, I want UTOPIA, so can you make me, can you incorporate my house or this subdivision? Which I thought was a huge statement.
I see Sean shaking his head as well. Sean, are you finding that?
Yes, we have those questions frequently from people who live just outside the city and are asking to annex because of the fiber.
Yep.
Interesting.
Go ahead. Depending on how you interpret that question, I don't know of a city that has, for instance, acquired an existing network to expand, but electric co-ops have done that, and others have as they're getting into this space. Some electric co-ops have purchased WISP or some sort of local independent, and then use that rather than trying to build from scratch. So it's not uncommon among some types of community networks, but not so much among municipal networks.
Interesting.
Yeah, one thing I think is going to be the thing is how to make some of these unincorporated areas feasible from a financial aspect is one thing that we always say is we always think that fiber to the home should be the solution for every house, but it might not be the first. So why don't you do some fixed wireless solutions that are not oversubscribed in the meantime until you can make it financially feasible to build fiber to the home down the road.
Right, and I think there's a lot of interest in that hybrid developmental model, knowing that you want to have fiber at the end, but until you have enough density to justify it, doing some fixed wireless. We've heard from a lot of customers that are interested in that. Yes, I'm saying it. Can you believe it? The fiber maven is saying that they're.
I get it too, Heather. I get it too. I can't believe I say it either. But you have to find creative solutions in our broadband crisis right now.
Correct. And I have another question. Ooh, this is really technical. I don't even know what half the term. Anyone planning to add shared RAN parentheses 5G close parentheses offering if it's allowed in the US? Anybody know what that means, first of all?
I don't know what the shared RAN. We have 5G that some of our ISPs for backup sell as part of a solution, especially with SD-WAN, where fiber is the primary connection and the cellular is the backup connection. I don't know if that is a protocol out of Europe. I don't know. I've never heard that before.
Anybody on this call?
No. Yeah, we're providing connectivity to 5G towers, but I don't know if that's technical over my head.
Yeah, it's way over mine too.
We're focusing on our fiber network right now, and 5G may be the next step, but
it's just another application that runs on fiber, guys. Remember that.
Right.
So how do you guys attract qualified ISPs? I know, Kim, this was a transition for you all as you went from the early days to where you are today. How do you make sure that the ISPs that are joining your network are qualified? And is there some minimum level? I mean, Chris talked a little bit about this. What kind of minimum level of subscriber do you have to have a multiple ISP environment?
First of all, we don't have any problems getting ISPs to contact us. I think we at least get 2 to 3 each week who want to come on our network. My main thing is, do you live in your parents' basement and you're operating an ISP? That's probably not going to work. But we do get people who've never done this and they think that their margins are going to be quite significant, which they are not to operate. I think you have to have a ISP with a track record of providing services. And one thing that we ask for, or we require for all new ISPs, is to have a 10 gig in and out. And that usually weeds out people who don't, who are like mom and pops in the business. We really want to make sure that when we vet ISP, they know what they're doing and they have a track record in the industry. But from scalable, we don't want 100 ISPs on our network. We want to have a good selection of ISPs that people can select from, but I don't want ISPs and I don't want provider switches. Open access networks are great because it gives consumers choice, but we want to keep ISPs too happy and not the consumer switching day to day. Because that does nobody any good for ISPs. So we want to have that choice out there, but we don't want to encourage churn either. If the customers are happy. But yeah, I think there's a lot of applications, but a lot of requirements. But yeah, those are just a few.
Sean?
We haven't established a lot of requirements on our network, but we only have 4 ISPs right now. So as they come, that may be something that we delve into a little bit more, but the ones that we have on our system have been really, really good. And we also don't, we advertise that you can switch your ISP from day to day if you want to. People don't really do that, but it's kind of nice to say, oh, well, you've got the freedom that you don't have with a locked-in contract.
And David, what about you? Oh.
We have a master service agreement, which touches on a number of minimum requirements that the ISP must meet. In some situations, the role is reversed with some of our international ISPs that connect with us. we actually go through their 1,400 pages of requirements to be a transport provider on their network. So some of that we've learned from being in that role, and then we sort of built on that when we're providing the master service agreement.
No, it's definitely going to be, there's a lot of people out there trying to be ISPs right now. And I'm sure that both Dave and Sean get a lot of inquiries from people who want to be ISPs on their network. And it can be a little bit laborious at times of trying to vet them.
Yeah, when we had the dial-up era, we had thousands upon thousands of ISPs. And to some extent, I think some of us would like to get a sense of whether that's possible again. Not that there would be 1,000 on the UTOPIA network, but if there's 20 on the UTOPIA network, which there's close to, you can imagine that we would have thousands across the United States potentially. And I've gone through periods where, depending on where you are, you might find that there's fewer or more. But one of the things I'm tracking is when we get the first top 10 US company that's doing it, because CenturyLink, now Lumen, is operating in Springfield, Missouri on municipal fiber. Consolidated, a large incumbent in New England, is striking municipal deal after municipal deal to operate on municipal fiber in New Hampshire. Things are changing out there, and I think it may not be the case that the large companies with the big advertising budgets and whatnot stay away from these networks. And I want to, at that point, that I'm a little bit worried about making sure we preserve the idiosyncratic ISPs. So we do need to think about this.
Yeah, I agree with that, Chris. I think one thing, if you're looking to get on an open access network, bring a unique offering. Don't just offer data only or phone. Yeah, that is one thing that we're looking, is because you have to bring something else that we don't have from other providers on our network.
So let me ask, I know we only have like 3 minutes left. Ooh, we could go on for another. Chris, you were right. We're going to run out of time, but are your ISPs generally providing a full panoply of applications, and then that, or are they tending to specialize? Like, do you find ISPs that are more geared to certain applications, or do they offer a full array? Are they all offering different products, but basically the same applications? Is that
the same? I think there's a little differences but we don't have a provider who's really come in with a game changer application yet. I think they're looking for it. I think they're out there, but I think that goes back to the innovation of needing more innovation in this space.
I have a sense that in UTOPIA, there are some that advertise and try to capitalize on having the best interconnection for gaming services in niche plays like that, where they might say, you're going to get two milliseconds off your ping on us. So
yeah.
Okay, Craig's there to give me the
Yeah, we do have of our 14, 4 of our carriers are tier 1. They're large international carriers that use us for transport in Medina County. But as Christopher said, we are also seeing the competition among peering. Who peers the best to Amazon Web Services and to Microsoft Azure and to all of those big places, the massive data centers that also bring all sorts of intertangled or intertwined services to run a corporation more than just internet and voice.
Okay. So I think that Craig is here to wrap us up. And this has been, I just sent y'all a note, a fabulous panel. I like the fact that you guys didn't hang back at all. And we had a great audience, who most of which stayed with us through the whole hour, which is wonderful. And Craig, I'll let you do the wrap up and tell people how they can get a copy of it and watch it on replay.
Absolutely. And I echo the fact that it was a phenomenal conversation, some wonderful points brought out through the entirety of this. I was really intrigued with the statistics that David shared on the number of new jobs there in Medina County tied to fiber development, and the interest from prospective industry looking at what kind of network was in place and how it was administered. I was also intrigued with a comment that Kim made regarding the importance of having quality ISPs to deliver services. And of course, Chris sharing so much to the conversation. But I wanted to echo his congratulations to the track record that the city of Ammon has had with educating and inspiring so many cities, not just in Idaho, but far beyond. And greatly appreciate all that we have been able to cover today. We literally could go hours and look forward to the next episode of this. Thanks so much to everybody for being part of our panel. And until next time, on behalf of everyone here, this will wrap it up for this edition of the Broadband Bunch Zero Touch Learning Series. We'll see you next time.